So when people talk about democracy being for the educated, I give this example. So I would say that the reason I feel akin to your diaspora here, because the diaspora here was totally supportive. They put me up. I didn't have to spend anything at all for my board and lodging. They looked after me, they took me around, they arranged my meetings. And I think, therefore, I've come to the conclusion that diasporas, within the framework of the constitution of the country which they have adopted, it has a very important role to play for democracy and cultural freedom. And from that point of view, when Satish Sharma suggested this topic, I said, I'd be delighted to do it. And I would like to place a few facts. First of all, those of you who are British citizens, their first primary loyalty politically belongs to Britain. And we don't expect them to support India against Britain on anything which is of bilateral significance to the two countries, nor do we expect them to campaign for India against British interests. So there's none of that in it. You are British citizens, you are loyal British citizens, and we will respect that. But we have, citizenship is only one aspect of your personality, or rather one description of you. And the other description of you is identity. And that identity may not, is maybe formulated differently. For example, the previous Prime Minister of Britain, yes, Mr. Cameron. Mr. Cameron had been asked by BBC once, what is the identity of a Britisher? And he said, the identity of Britain is it's a Christian society. When it was pointed out to him that there are a large number of Muslims, Hindus, Jews, etc., he said, yes, they are welcome citizens of our country, but the original idea of Britain, which is the identity, is a Christian. And that's the same thing in the United States. The United States, Professor Samuel Huntington, in his book, Who We Are, said Americans, the identity of an American is white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, Christian, of course, Protestant means Christian, English-speaking people. And when it was pointed out to him that they are Mexicans, they are Indians, they are Chinese, he said, yes, they are all American citizens, but the identity of the country remains what I said. So there is this debate, but I think broadly I accept that there is something, if there's a country which has a civilization, then that civilization has an identity. People who put together this civilization. And therefore, the identity of yours as people from India, that stands, even though you are loyal British citizens. And that means you can eat your sambar and your idlis, you will be no less British if you do that. Women can wear saris, and there will not be any less British. Or they can speak Gujarati at home, that there will not be any less English. And so in that in that view, what is the role of the Indian diaspora? And I would like to say that for the moment, the ideas I've propounded are more easily digestible by the Hindu community, as well as those other religions of India which were born in India. I have still not reached the stage where I am able to persuade, for example, the Islamic community of this concept of identity. And because they know that it really requires that culturally a person should be of the continuing civilization of India. And therefore there's some resistance because many wrongly think that they are descended from people from Arabia and such other places. As far as Christians are concerned, they don't quarrel with the question of identity, but there is an extraterritorial loyalty as far as religion is concerned. So there is resistance to some of the things that I advocate. But at the moment, since a majority, I think, of the diaspora from India is Hindu, am I right? Therefore, I'm addressing it to that. And those other religions which were born in India. Now here, first thing I think, before you can think in terms of British politics, you have to deal with certain problems which are of our own creation. For instance, although the Jain community is not something that has any issues at all, there is a fundamental issue of the question of the Sikh community. And what has happened to them is, in my opinion, something that should never have happened. I'm talking about the Operation Blue Star of 1984 and the subsequent, what is, in fact, my opinion, de facto genocide of the Sikh masses in the October killings of the Sikhs. God knows how many were killed, because we don't have an official count, but it could be anywhere between 3,000 to maybe as much as 7,000. Now, this is something that has not been addressed, because the whole world knows in India that who are the people who organized it. And they've been identified too. But the court processes have been slow. But fortunately, I can say that in the last 2 weeks, in my arguments in another matter, where 42 young Muslim boys were killed in cold blood by the local provincial armed constabulary of Uttar Pradesh, in 1987, which I had taken up at that time because the state denied that such an incident ever took place, established first that it did take place, and then the court processes were so onerous that we couldn't get any far. And ultimately, the lower courts dismissed the case against those who were accused, because at midnight, these policemen who killed Muslim boys one by one were wearing helmets, and therefore they couldn't be identified. So the two survivors on whom the whole case rested were not able to identify whether the people who killed them were the people who killed them, because they said he didn't recognize them. It was midnight at that time, and moreover, they were wearing helmets. So the judge, while passing the order of acquittal, expressed great agony that I is saying that I'm forced by the law of evidence to acquit them, but this is something that should bother the conscience of everybody. So I took it in appeal to the High Court. And finally, I started arguing that the genocide law, the Genocide Convention, should be applied. Now, if that, the court is now considering this on 12th April, Delhi High Court. If I'm successful, then I'm quite sure that application of that judgment to the Sikh massacre or genocide of 1984 would find a solution, and the culprits would be brought to book. But I would like to say to the majority Hindu community that in dealing with Sikh, please recognize the extraordinary sacrifice they've made for the existence of the Hindu community, not for the existence of the Sikh community. It was founded originally by people from the Hindu community, but in the end, the sacrifices they made and the ultimate victory they achieved was the basis for the end of the Mughal Empire. And Guru Tegh Bahadur, who personally, sacrificed his life, refusing to bend before the Mughal emperors, and Guru Gobind Singh, who created an army out of 5 people, and ultimately, through the length and breadth of the country, he eliminated the Mughals, and the Mughals were so disabled, debilitated, that they could never rise again. So this contribution to the safety and the protection of the Hindu community should make the Hindu community reach out to the Sikhs and see that alienation that has taken place should be ended. And as far as I am concerned, I'm no part of the Congress Party because this all happened when Congress Party was in power. So it's easy for me to put the blame on them. But there was also a conspiracy of silence, and that should be over now. So I think indeed, in my opinion, the diaspora first must start the process of consolidation with what I call as Indic religions. Those religions were born in India. Because we are very similar in basic concepts. We believe God is everywhere. And all paths to religion lead to God. So, like that, the fundamental principles are there, and each of us refer to the God of the other. For instance, Buddha is accepted as one of our avatars now. And the Sikhs in their Guru Granth Sahib, they mention Rama and Krishna over and over again. So, therefore, the process of becoming a Indian community should begin with the Hindus and the Indic religions of India. And for that purpose, the community leaders should make special efforts to bring particularly the Sikh community on board, which has been living in alienation and in separation, and the younger generation being subject to propaganda, which all kinds of wrong things have been said. Now, once this process goes on, then I think the time has come for the Indian diaspora to stop thinking only in terms of being professors, doctors, engineers. The British society is not run by doctors, engineers, and professors. It's run by the police, it's run by the judiciary, it's run by the bureaucracy, it's run by parliament. So there must be an effort to made for the Indian community to encourage people to go into these different professions, particularly police, judiciary, and parliament. And we have now, so the process has started, people are getting, but there needs to be much more consolidation, there must be much more support, financial support, so that people will be able to get elected without having to be a millionaire or billionaire. So I think this is the most important part that you have to do. And in that process, you have to forget your divisions. This caste thing he mentions only one part, namely the so-called Dalit caste. Dalit is a name which is post-independence, it wasn't there before. One has to read the writings of Dr. Ambedkar. When he was getting his PhD in economics from the Columbia University, in 1916, he was asked to present a seminar in India. And this seminar, he presented a paper, The Essential Unity of India. I mean, hardly anybody has read it. It's not part of our college curriculum or school curriculum, where he describes why, despite all these so-called differences, India is one integrated country like no other country in the world. And this is Dr. Ambedkar writing. He said he even debunks this whole basis of the caste. And caste is actually, we use the word jati. For Brahmin, the fourfold classifications, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, that we use as Varna, we call it as Varna. Varna is a division of labor and is not birth-based. What is the authority for that? Lord Krishna himself in Gita. He says, I created this Varna system, but I did not make it as birth-based, I made it as gunas, that is your characteristics. But in other words, Varna is a division of labor. And the two great rishis, Brigu and Bhardwaja, had laid down, saying that there are 4 dimensions of power. The first dimension, he said, is knowledge. The second dimension, Rishi Brigu said, is weapon. Weapon is a source of power. And third is money, wealth. And fourth is land. These are the 4 sources of power. And we must, in order to have a society functioning properly, we must decentralize this. That is, if somebody goes to learning, he will not have weapons, he will not have wealth, he will not have land. But he will be the most highly regarded. And that is why you find a country like India. You had a leader called like Mahatma Gandhi, who just was underdressed. I mean, he was largely undressed, you see. And when I first went to Harvard to study and get my PhD, my classmate asked me, how can you follow a leader like Mahatma Gandhi? So I said, why? He said, the man is not properly dressed. So I said, in your country, leaders must be properly dressed. He said, of course. They must have a beautiful tie, they must have a lovely shirt, starched shirt, they must have suit, their shoes should be shiny. Otherwise, you will not. I said, supposing Mahatma Gandhi came to your country to be a leader, what will you do? He said, we'll arrest him for indecent exposure. You see, look at our priests, the sannyasis. So simply dressed, no matter how famous they are. Whereas you see the Pope or the Imam of Makkah, you will see them how well dressed they are. I'm not objecting to that. I'm saying this is typical characteristic of us in India. That is, the Indic religions all propagate that the highest is sacrifice. Learning and sacrifice. If that two come together, you are a Brahmin. You don't have to be born of Brahmin parents. For instance, Vishwamitra was the greatest rishi we produced. Rishi of rishis. Even the gods are scared of him. And when he threatened to create an alternative universe, everything that was there in the universe, he did the opposite. And he started the process. For example, this coconut. Coconut was created by Vishwamitra. Because in every other fruit, the flesh of the fruit is outside, and the hard part is the seed, which is inside. But in coconut, it is exactly the opposite. So in all this, potato growing below the ground as opposed to above the ground. So when he started doing the process, then the gods, folded their heads and said, okay. He wanted to visit the heaven and see it. They weren't permitting him. And finally they invited him to come and see the heaven. So he was a Kshatriya. Born in a Kshatriya family. Veda Vyasa, who wrote the Mahabharata, his mother was a fisherwoman. Similarly, Kalidasa, who was the greatest poet we produced, he was Vanavasi, cutting branches of trees, till the princess who was married to him forcibly by the priests of the kingdom as revenge, she educated him and he became the greatest poet. Valmiki is accepted by the Dalits as a Dalit. But he wrote the Ramayana because he also took to learning, and as the society accepted him as a Maharishi. And there is no such thing as the supremacy of the Brahmins. Ravan was a Brahmin. How many people knew? In fact, Karnanidhi ran for 30 years an anti-Brahmin movement in Tamil Nadu and celebrated Ravan Leela as opposed to Ram Leela. Till I pointed out to him that Ravan himself was a Brahmin. And then he told me, no, but at least he's a Tamil. So I told him that is also not true, because Raman was born in an area called Noida, which is just after Delhi. There's a village there. Even now, if you come next time to Delhi, please go to Bisarak village. There's a big signboard there. So this whole thing that these are partitions of our society which are rigid is wrong. The only thing true is that we are Hindus. And along with the Indic religion, we have a common view. And therefore, it's very easy to bring the other Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. And of course, the Sikhs will have to make a special effort. They have a distinct religion. Their Guru Granth Sahib postulates very clear, distinct religious principle. But at the same time, they came out of us. So therefore, we must bond together and face it. Ultimately, we can extend this later on to Islamic community, provided the Islamic people accept what the modern science says. The modern science says that, that is the DNA studies, which is published in the Journal of Genetics of Cambridge University. It says that All Indians from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, from Kutch to Guwahati, they have the same DNA. They're all the same. I in fact tested this once when Raj Thackeray in Bombay was making a big hullabaloo about UP Walas coming and taking the entire taxi trade. So I managed to get a sample of his hair and that of a UP taxi driver and sent it to the laboratory for testing, and back came the report that their DNA is the same. So of course I did propaganda by saying that Raj Thackeray also originally came from UP because his DNA is the same. There's no difference between any Indian, whether it's a Brahmin or a scheduled caste, or according to me, between a Hindu and a Muslim and a Christian. Christians of course accept that, but Muslims privately accept it, but not publicly. I have my friend Farooq Abdullah once told me, my ancestors were Gaud Saraswat Brahmins. So I said, why don't you say it publicly? He said, are you mad? The mullah will kill me. So this diaspora should now actively promote their children, those who are capable of being professors. I mean, you think it's got the natural instinct to be a professor, businessman, fine. But if he's still in the process of thinking, encourage him to be a high official of the police by joining the police force, for which he'll have to pass a competitive exam, or a judge, become a lawyer, and then try to be a judge. The power structure of Britain requires Indians, because we have established ourselves as a community which has contributed to the society. We have hardly, I think we are probably the lowest number of people in jail. 427. 427 as compared to thousands and thousands of others, nameless others, you see. I mean, you're sort of threat to nobody. And while the world is crumbling on the question of democracy, we have run a democracy in the last 70 years. And we have proved that it doesn't matter we are not fully literate, but when the emergency we were tested, the people of India threw out the people who tried to snuff out democracy. So as a united community, we must now see that the levers of power, because there is hardly any resistance. Normal prejudices is there in any society. But the enlightened opinion is that this Indian community has contributed heavily to ours. Of course, we have some people who, to escape the law, come to London. They're not your diaspora, they're from India. And a lot of them buy with their ill-gotten money properties, as you have found out, in various parts of England, or put their money in British Virgin Islands. But they are people from India, you don't have to worry about that. But as a community, as in America, you have been accepted as people who, like the Chinese, contribute to the society's growth. And therefore, you must also share in the power, and not just contribute, but you must also have a say in how what you have contributed is distributed. And that, I think, would be the biggest contribution we would do, to continue to be good British citizens. But at the same time, culture is international, universal, and to pursue that and propagate it, it will be necessary. I was very surprised to learn that St. John's School teaches Sanskrit. St. James, is it? Sanskrit and?
Sanskrit at St. James.
St. James. So St. James teaches Sanskrit, and I checked with a friend to find out why would they do that. He said, reciting of Sanskrit shlokas generates vibrations in your body which develops a better human being. Now, if I said that in India, they'll say this man is communal Hindu fanatic, and so on, try to dismiss me. But like yoga, which was originally accepted in the West and now has become fashionable in India, I'm sure that Sanskrit will now become fashionable too. But I think all of you, if you want to cement yourself, because there are Sanskrit words in Gurmukhi, in Punjabi, the Gurmukhi script is very similar to the Devanagari script, because if you want to put ka and want to put ki, it's the same principle, phonetic script. So, or you take Tamil script, Tamil script, you just write ka, and then you want to say ki, you just put a matra, just like in Devanagari. So, in fact, this Sanskrit is one which has a huge vocabulary in our, in each of our languages. In Tamil, it's the least, perhaps in 42%, but Kannada has 65%, Malayalam has 80%. Now, Tamil people were propagating that it doesn't have any Sanskrit words. In fact, again with Karunanidhi, I had a debate on that. And I finally told him, your name is Sanskrit. So, what has been fed into our brain is not this Aryan, Dravidian, division, caste, all these is rubbish. The essential unity has always been propagated, that in the end we are all one community. And that one community is what the diaspora should do. And as a community then, see how best the levers of power in Britain also you share in. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, for an educational and inspirational speech, dispelling myths about caste and also highlighting the importance of the Indian diaspora in the UK and the UK's government support of India, especially during the times of the emergency. And also the necessity for all Indians, no matter what religion we are from, to unite together under one Indian identity. Ladies and gentlemen, please, another round of applause for Dr. Subramanian Swamy.
We now have an interactive session, and to moderate and mediate this interactive session, I'd like to introduce Rajesh Singh. Rajesh Singh was a key member in organising the Modi event, which many of us went to a short while ago. In addition to this, he's organised many other events and has been instrumental in quite a few pieces of work that a number of human rights activists from South Asia have been engaged in. So I'm now going to hand over to Rajesh Ji.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and we're going to start the interactive session. But how many of you follow Dr. Swamy on Twitter handle? Almost everybody. So this makes my job very easy because there are 3 ground rules on Twitter handle of Dr. Swamy. One is do not advise. Second, no multiple choice questions here.
Binary choice. Yeah.
No binary choice. Okay. And 1 question per person. So to say, we're going to have a very short and specific questions to get very short and sharp answers from the panel here. So I have Puneet with me to help me with the mic, and we also have the hashtag AskSwamy Twitter handle running, and I got Yogesh Sharma ji here from Jammu Kashmir Study Center who will be monitoring and asking some questions from there. So to start with, I would, if there are any questions to the panel, to Satish ji on the caste legislation and Sree Iyer ji on NDTV fraud book launch, you can ask, and then we can go for the wider questions later. So anybody in the audience? Yeah.
Namaste everybody, I'm Sree Counsil. Just before my question, I want to point out something that I observed. There was a virus alert when Satish Sharma ji spoke about caste on the screen behind. My question and my question is really paraphrasing what I've been victimized, and this question is for Sri Satish Sharma ji, who's been a great mentor. I've not paid him any fees, but he's my guru. How will I counter the most famous question that I've been always asked in the past 22 years, after my visualizing that I'm not just a Brahmin, but also the larger Hindu, about the caste? I mean, what are the famous questions that you have experienced in your life, and what is the most appropriate answer I can give? So I defend Hinduism myself, and also not my personal sin of being a Brahmin.
Thank you very much. That's a wonderful question. My approach to these issues is slightly different. Although I was born in a Brahmin family and carry what people assume to be a Brahmin name, according to my Janam Patrika, my Varna is Kshatriya. And so when somebody asks me that question, My first response is always, on what basis do they assume the right to even articulate that question? There is an assumed status that many people, they take the moral high ground in delving into the psychology and the history and the personality of other people. And that's an unpleasant thing to do. So my first observation is always, if I engage with this person, to whose benefit is it? And is this in fact just another onslaught and a mischief-making exercise? I grew up in the East Midlands, and in the East Midlands we were taught at a very early age, sticks and stones can break my bones, but calling me names has never hurt me. And so we have to become strong enough to recognise there are people who try and diminish by criticising and calling other people names and diminishing them in a completely and wholly unnecessary fashion. So I very rarely respond to that question in a manner which accommodates the legitimacy of the question. There are very few people who will ask that question without an agenda or indeed a positioning mechanism in play. And I would encourage everybody else to adopt the Kshatriya's answer to that, is that if you're going to come up to my Kshetra, you have to earn the right to participate in that Kshetra first. So I don't even tolerate that question. I don't suggest that anybody else who knows that they are innocent and that they are decent human beings, they shouldn't tolerate that question anymore either.
Dr. Swamy, you would like to add something?
I think it's appropriately answered.
Brilliant. So any more questions on caste legislation and the book launch, NDTV fraud? Yeah, one over there.
Namaste. Ayurji, I would like to ask you one question, because NDTV has remained in the business so far. Is there an Indian government going to investigate and close the channel and prosecute these people?
Well, the due process of law is in progress. Every day I hear about some movement towards a determination of wrongdoing. In fact, I think 2 days ago I read that the last appeal by NDTV to pay the 524 crore fine for the investment, for evading tax for the investment they got from General Electric. The Delhi High Court rejected the stay order that was issued by ITAT, Income Tax Tribunal. See, what happens is all these different government organizations have their own interpretation of how the law should be applied. And there is some time it takes before the clarity emerges out of this. But what I see is Delhi High Court is very quickly converging on what's happening with NDTV. And I expect that they would be the ones who would rule something decisively. In fact, I think pretty soon NDTV has to come up with this 524 crores. It amazes me that they're still in business because they're losing money hand over fist. So somebody is investing and keeping them afloat. And what would be the reason for doing that? And to answer this question, don't ask me the answer, but you watch which personalities use NDTV as an exclusive mouthpiece. Thank you.
Hi, hello, my name is Jayesh Natal. I'm with Friends of India Society, so Swamiji, welcome back as our founder. Ayurji, I am curious as you are about NDTV. I watch it in the UK because that's the only English source of news we have, unfortunately. So I have two sort of points. One, I haven't read any of your material yet, and I look forward to reading it. But there is this big, wide US conspiracy theory, which I believe backed via CIA and the Ford Foundation and all those American General Electric or whoever, that the CIA funnels money to these charities as well, and then these charities in turn place adverts within NDTV to keep it going. So when you watch all the adverts on NDTV, they're appealing to Indians for money in African poverty relief programs and things like that, which don't make sense. So I don't know whether you subscribe to any of that. Ford Foundation is a particular organization I'm watching. And the second point is, in the UK we have China TV, Japan TV, German, French. Isn't it time maybe Doordarshan International or some kind of Indian channel which can promote India as the Japanese do, the Chinese do? Isn't about time something like that came into being to counter this kind of innovation?
Sorry. Okay. So you had two questions. Let me answer the first one. I personally do not know of the link between the organizations you mentioned. However, there's a lot of layering that happens whenever somebody wants to hide their wealth. So this layering is like peeling onion, and it's not even one onion. You have one layer of this onion and another layer of another onion and so on. Now I've written about this also extensively at pgurus.com. So looking at the investments that went into NDTV from American companies, that is still work in progress. I essentially took the low-hanging fruit that the income tax department provided. So I've been tracing it from that side. I have not started tracing it from this side. I do have a lot of concerns about GE's involvement, and some of that is mentioned. There could be a possible quid pro quo. See, it's easy to make these allegations. You have to back it up with proof. So all I can tell you at this time is there is something there, but it takes some more time to unearth the truth. I have written to GE in US. I myself was a stockholder in GE, so I am baffled that $150 million was invested in a shell company with 0 employees, 0 revenues, and it just boggles my mind. Second question that you asked, I think under Modi government, the government entities are also beginning to rediscover themselves. Now I'll give you one example. Air India now flies non-stop from San Francisco to Delhi. I think they're also flying some other destinations. But Air India does this in a very clever way. They are circumventing the world so that they can take advantage of the tailwind. So what happens is an effective flying time of 18 hours has been reduced to 16 hours consistently. Not one airline has thought about it before India. And this is Air India which did it, not Jet Airlines. Some of the other private carriers didn't do it.
So, put it simply, that if you leave from India and want to go to San Francisco, you go via Hong Kong,
Right.
non-stop. The wind then takes you there.
Right.
But from San Francisco, you can't come back by the same route.
Right.
So you go over New York and because the wind helps you there. It's only 14 hours.
Yeah. Oh, it's only 14 hours. So this is the government arm. And I've been hearing very good TRP numbers for Doordarshan. It's available actually free on YouTube. You should be able to see it today. I take that back. Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are available free on TV. I'm not 100% sure about Doordarshan, but please check it out on YouTube. You may have a channel of Doordarshan also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So before we open the floor for the wider questions. Okay, please.
My name is Anil Mene. I'm also from Fiji. The question is for Dr. Iyer. Not really question, but I recently met Mrs. Desai, Mrs. Makarunda Desai in Delhi. So I had a nice talk with her about Fiji operations. How Mr. Desai came here, how he started. You two were here during emergency. Can you elaborate for us your work as far as Fiji is concerned or democracy is concerned? Dr. Swamy, this is for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, your work as far as Fiji is concerned to raise voice against Indira Gandhi in this area or in the Western world. How and what exactly did you do under Fiji? Thank you very much.
Well, first objective was to propagate for the Indian audience what really emergencies, because people didn't know anything. There's total press censorship. And the Doordarshan and the All India Radio was propagating that a few smugglers and thieves and crooks have been caught, but otherwise there's, nobody else is in jail. We exploded that myth and said that 140,000 innocent people have been taken under detention and put in jail. and that most of the top leaders of the parties are in jail. In the case of Moraji Desai and JP, they are in solitary confinement. So this smashing of that false report about the emergency helped the British crowd here and later on the American crowd to get upset about it, because previously they thought this is India is anyway a chaotic country, she's bringing some law and order, trains are running on time, officers are going to office on time, that kind of thing. And some hard measures are sometimes necessary, and she says it's temporary. And they were quite reconciled with it. But when we brought this information, and not only we went on BBC, but we went to every newspaper, I must say both Times and Guardian, and Telegraph a little less, but of course in the much later, as we're getting closer to the end of the emergency, Telegraph also joined them. These two papers did a first-rate job, and of course the magazine Economist. And then the British authorities came to know, they contacted us, we were also all the time trying to contact them, and their members of parliament went to India. The only member of parliament who was supportive of the emergency in a very sophisticated language was a man called Foote. Michael Foote, yeah. I think he was a communist, if you ask me. The left wing of the Labour Party. So, but the widespread support in Parliament. I myself was invited to Parliament to meet the MPs in a special gathering. And the net result was that the British visiting ministers, British parliamentarians, British newspapers, and Mrs. Gandhi always cared for this because she had she was attached to the British because she herself spent some time here. Not that she passed any exam, but she still she was here, her father was here, her children, her two sons were here. So she had this British connection, and she was then getting upset that the people who she cared for, who were their audience, were now raising questions about her democratic credentials. After that, we began the process of demonstrations because that made it easy for the newspaper, media, and BBC channel. There was one program which came at 10 o'clock in the night. It was very popular, which was a discussion program. So BBC TV also did tremendous job. And we replicated the same thing in America. The Americans were much less warm compared to the British, surprisingly, because they thought that, this is the way of all third world countries, and Sanjay Gandhi seems to be emerging, he's anti-communist, and he's amenable to bribe, so, we can do business with India. The Americans took that kind of practical view of the benefits of a society which is totalitarian, which in those days especially, now much less, Americans found much easier to deal with totalitarian societies than democratic societies. So, but still, because the American intellectuals, and many of them are my colleagues, are very famous Nobel laureates, they joined in, they brought out big advertisements in newspapers, etc. And we replicated that there. And I went to 23 states in the United States, and the Americans soon began to see this as a Soviet conspiracy. It was Soviet supported, no question about it. And so I think the most important lesson I got out of the FISI was this interaction with the bureaucracy here. And that had an impact, it changed. And I would say that should continue. We should develop contacts with bureaucracy, parliament, lawyers, if possible with judges. So therefore the power structure should be leveraged to the maximum possible extent by the PC.
Thank you.
As I'm moderating the session, I would like to take that privilege of asking a question to Dr. Swamy, because you mentioned Soviet Union. I would like to ask you about Subhash Chandra Bose ji. Well, he was he died in the plane crash, or was it was a British torture under Soviet Union which killed him? So there was a recent report as well on that line of reports.
Well, first of all, let me tell you what is the declassification that we did and what is that show. First of all, let me just, I mean, it may take 5 minutes.
Please,
Please. Subhash Bose, when the war was ending, left Burma and came to Singapore and then flew to Saigon. And in Saigon, the Japanese met him and told him that they had made arrangements for a plane, which they officially said was to take him to Tokyo. But subsequently, we have found out, and I'll tell you what the evidence is, to fly him to what is now called in Chinese language as Dalian, or Dairen in English, D-A-I-R-E-N, but it's actually Dalian. So that is a Heilongjiang province port, and then he was to be picked up by Japanese, because that time it was part of Manchuria, and it was under Japanese occupation even then. And so they provided a jeep and took him across the Soviet border. Now, this was confirmed by an indirect way, by a testimony, affidavit by Jawaharlal Nehru's stenographer called Suresh Jain, or Subhash Jain, Shyam Jain, Shyamlal Jain, yeah, Shyamlal Jain, who gave an affidavit to the Counsil Commission that I was, and he volunteered it because he was not summoned. In fact, he wouldn't have been summoned, but he volunteered it. So Counsil called him for evidence and grilled him. He said that on the 26th of December 1945, now the officially announced date was by a Japanese news agency on 23rd of August of 1945. That on 18th, Subhash Chandra Bose has died in an air crash in Taiwan. That is, those days I think it was called Formosa. And this man said that Jawaharlal Nehru called me at 10 o'clock at night on 26th December 1945, which is some months after this, and said, "Come right away with your typewriter and some carbon and some paper." So he said, "I'm already, got in my pajamas, and can I come tomorrow?" He said, "No, you have to come now." So he went rushing to an office in Daryaganj, where he and Asaf Ali, has everybody heard the name Asaf Ali? No. Yeah, he was one of the people who was in the freedom fight. Asaf Ali had an office for the purpose of fighting court cases of Indian National Army who had been put up for trial by the British. Okay, so when he went in, he saw Nehru pacing up and down, and Asaf Ali was just drinking and smoking. So Nehru took him to another room and said, "Have you brought your typewriter?" He said, "Yes, it's just downstairs, I'll bring it up." Second, "Have you brought paper, carbon?" He said, "Yes." So all right, take the dictation. So then he says that Nehru stuck his hand into his achkan and pulled out a piece of paper and said, "Type this first before I give you the dictation." So he saw that with a handwritten translation of a Russian note where it said that Soviet Union has the custody of Subhash Chandra Bose. He was intercepted on the border, and then a message from Stalin to Nehru saying that what do you, Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, want me to do with him? Now, Jawaharlal Nehru was not yet Prime Minister. He was only in 1946 was the interim Prime Minister. So, but he was, everybody thought he was going to be Prime Minister, but Gandhi was for it. So he says, what do you want me to do? So, after he typed this, he said, take a dictation to Attlee. So, Attlee was the Prime Minister, so Jawaharlal Nehru writes that rascal Stalin has got the custody of Subhash Bose, and since the British government had declared him as war criminal, it is the job of the British to take appropriate action when a war criminal is found, so they shoot him. So that letter, he said, I wrote it, but I couldn't keep a copy because Jawaharlal Nehru took the carbon and the carbon copy. But from my memory, I was so stunned by that dictation. I wrote it out, and this is it. Khosla grilled him, but the man didn't shake. And in the end, Khosla didn't even refer to him in the report and put it in the appendix from which I extracted it. Now, so this is one proof. The second proof is a general of the Soviet GRU, which is, I think, Air Force or Army. Yeah, so it's one of these. It's I think the most military secret. So he wrote an article in 1977 in a left-wing magazine in India called Mainstream, where he confirms that Subhash Bose was in Siberia because he was in charge of Siberia. So he remembers him, but remembers him in a terribly weak, starved condition. And so one gets the impression from his thing that Subhash Bose may have died around 53, 54. In my opinion, because of the fact that Subhash was prevented from coming to India, Nehru could become Prime Minister. Right? And this is further confirmed by two things. One, the original announcement of the British government was that, of the Attlee government, was that the independence will be granted in June 1948. But from Singapore came Mountbatten, and he arbitrarily himself said that I will leave my post as Governor General if it is not done by 15th August. So 15th August was fixed by him. The speculation is that he knew that Subhash Bose is alive. Gandhi himself made two statements that I want the people of India to believe me that Subhash Bose is still alive. Now we don't know whether he had information, not information, but that's it. Now, in 1953, another piece of evidence or news or data. Attlee, as ex-Prime Minister, came to Calcutta, and he was honoured by the governor. In a dinner meeting, a question was asked of him: why did you give India freedom when you had won the war and India's Quit India movement had been crushed and India was at its weakest moment? At that stage, you decided to give the freedom. What was the motivation? Was it Mahatma Gandhi's leadership had become so strong that he thought he couldn't stay? So Attlee was quoted by the governor, who was also that time Chief Justice of the Calcutta High Court, saying that, and this was never contradicted by any Britisher, saying that that is not anything to do with Gandhi. In fact, Justice Mukherjee expressed that Attlee had a wry smile and twisted his lips and then said, no, nothing of the kind. It's basically the fear of Subhash Chandra Bose coming back. And he said that we British had made one resolve after 1857 that if the Indian army ever revolts, then British will not stay because we don't have the numbers to stay. And there was already the INA came, there was a revolt all over India which never got reported, but we know now there was a massive revolt. There were columns which tried to march to Delhi and so on. Now, our government has brought all this out, and you can piece together to know that the CIA was asked by a commission inquiry, which was set up on the direction of the Calcutta High Court in 2002 by the NDA government. I think it's called Justice Mukherjee Commission. They wrote to the CIA saying that Taiwan came under your control on the 3rd of September of 1945. And this accident, this so-called plane crash that took place in Taipei airport, took place in August 18th, according to the Japanese press statement. Is this true? That there was a crash and that the charred bodies were brought to such and such a hospital. The CIA is given it in writing that according to all the records that we were able to assemble from April 1945 to September 3, there is no evidence whatsoever of A, plane crash, two charred bodies in the hospital. And we have no way of affirming that Subhash Chandra Bose died.
So clearly this is a bigger conspiracy than 9/11 being an inside job. Which is still to be resolved.
No, 9/11 was not an inside job.
No, but that's a conspiracy.
A
lot of people like to believe
it.
it.
Really ridicule this with 9/11. So
Yes.
9/11 is, everybody knows, not an inside job. It's only a way of escapism.
Yes.
We are not here on escapism.
Yes.
We have got commission inquiry report, we have the CIA report, we have lots of it. We have asked the Russians. The Russians have coolly replied that all those records are destroyed. And the Russians are not known for telling the truth. So, I think we should twist their arm on something or the other and get it. The British have said, as we deem it secure from the national interest point of view, we shall continue to release, declassify these documents, and whatever we have so considered has already been released, which is nothing. So the British have it, and one day we'll get it.
Thank you, Swamiji, for that. Any questions on the floor for Swamiji, Dr. Swamy? Please. One for the lady over there.
Pranam, Dr. Swamy. Now that we are certain in the UK, coming out of EU, do you see any value in Bharat keeping up within the closed group of nations called Commonwealth?
Well, there's nothing more enjoyable than like a association which has conferences in exotic places. The only thing I find little uneasiness about the Commonwealth is that the Queen is the permanent head. Why? I mean, it should be rotational. And if the British agree to make it rotational, then I have no difficulty in saying, and one more association, no problem. That's it. No, but, anyway.
So I'm surprised by the stance of the secular or the left in India, what they've been taught over the years, and it's usually articulated on NDTV regularly. And these people are truly Hindu-phobic. What are the plans for rectification of this?
Well, first thing we have to do is get a textbook for schools and colleges written about our true history, based on scientific evidence, based on accurate translations, and for that we need a committee. The BJP, if I may say, is undergoing a change to discover its true identity. I mean, I'm talking about identity of all our Indians, but we had an identity crisis in BJP also. But now the Anglo-Saxons have been set aside. And the UP Chief Minister's selection shows that we come to adopt what is our true nature, which is not hostile Hindutva, not directed against anybody, but internal renaissance of the Hindu society. For that we need a book, and I think I can persuade our government to set up a committee. I think the ideal chairman would be Rajiv Malhotra. And they have 5, 6 people. We have already captured the Indira Gandhi National Arts Center. Ram Bahadur Rai is one of us. And the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, which is also one of us, is the chairman now, Lokesh Chandra. Like that, the National Museum is now also taken over by us. I think the Indian textbooks are the real source of all that distorted thinking about our past. And that, you see, the key question which has been avoided by Indian historians is, why is it that after 800 years rule of Islam, India is still 80% Hindu? The reason is, Iran was taken over, just like India, was taken over by Islam. In 15 years, they became 100% Muslim. Mesopotamia, Babylon, Egypt, all 15 to 21 years. Egypt in 21 years, Mesopotamia in 17 years, but India 800 years, and still you're 80%. Because Indian history books don't record the fight we put up everywhere. As I say, Guru Gobind Singh, I mean, his hardly gets, there is reference, much more reference than, say, Ahom dynasty of Assam, which actually stopped the Mughals from crossing into Burma. Not once, but 3 times, defeated them. And the Vijayanagara Empire, which lasted longer than Akbar to Aurangzeb, and lasted 300 years, had more territory under its surveillance, its reign, and brought about a renaissance. And no, there's hardly any mention. If you look at the book, maximum 1 paragraph, that in South India there was a kingdom called Vijayanagara. Nobody knows. Then the Peshwas, they practically defeated, except for that mishap in Panipat. They would have, and the British arrived with modern weapons. So the Peshwas had, the Marathas had literally taken over, liberated India. So I mean, these are, just giving illustration that the fact that Rani Jhansi actually, it was a national movement. It was not a mutiny. So all things have to be rectified, and these left-wing people have had a gala time on the basis of this election.
So you would like to add?
Yeah.
So Lady, that's a phenomenal question and a very, very pertinent one. And I'd just like to add something with regard to the use of language by the extreme left in India. You used the word Hinduphobia, and that word is something that we came across time and time again when we were doing our research on this caste legislation. But it's an inadequate word. It implies something other than what it actually means. And Hinduphobia means an irrational fear of Hindus. But I've yet to come across a person who has an irrational fear of Hindus. We are not a fearsome body of people by traditional history. And so in our report, we decided we needed to find a term which better described an irrational hatred of Hindus. Because that is a better description for much of what passes as commentary through the extremist left in India. And the term had to be of Latin origin because that gives it a certain gravitas. And so we're introducing in the report the word Hindu odium, because to find something odious means that you have an irrational hatred of it. And that is a much more appropriate description of the phenomenon I think you're referring to. So please feel free, you heard it here first. Hindu odium is the word to put on the hashtag.
Dr. Swamy, I have a follow-up question on your recent answer. We recently were seeing very disturbing reports from Bharat, where a lot of artists and sportspersons from Muslim background, they're getting abused by a Wahhabist mindset on social media or...
you mean by other Muslims?
Yes, by other Muslims. Is there a rise of Wahhabist Islamists in India with a tacit support from the communists in India?
Well, I mean, Wahhabis are from Saudi Arabia. They do give a lot of monetary assistance to Islamic organizations in India. We are taking a serious look at that. But of course, Saudi Arabians have told us that masjid can be demolished and shifted. So maybe till we solve the Ram temple matter, we will not touch this subject. You see, anybody who reforms is, anybody who says something which looks rational and means that people might accept it, the people who don't want this to spread, they do use these tactics. I am myself subject to this.
Yes.
But I've got a thick rhinoceros skin, so but the fact is that in the Muslim community, I have found many people who are ready to do it. This time on triple talaq, the Muslim women, I must commend them. I mean, they took a terrific stand. They come with their burqas and voted for us.
A million Muslims.
Huh?
A million Muslim women have gone against triple talaq.
Yeah, right. So I gave a petition. Yeah, of course, right. When I meet Muslims individually, most of them recognize. Now, surprisingly, the civil society of Pakistan is also saying, we are not Arabs, we are actually descended from Hindus. You know? And they want us to intervene to save them. You're surprised. So, I don't like the word synthesis because we are too big, we are 80%. How can you have synthesis of 15%? So, the issue is accommodation. And I say, if the Muslim community, to begin with, would say, our ancestors were Hindus, which is the truth, because that's what the scientific truth is. And that is something on an individual basis they all accept. If they publicly said that we are not come from Arabia, we are not got anything with Gori and Kazani, we are actually people here. Now we converted for what reason, we are not going into that. Then this Hindu society, they have, the Parsis came after persecution in Iran. We looked after them. They are one of the most leading communities of our society. The Jews, we looked after them so well that when they went back to Israel, the Israeli government passed a resolution, almost the first resolution, saying, thank you India, you are the only country which didn't persecute the Jews. I mean, that is the kind of tribute they paid to us. So I don't think we ever will be in favor of any jihad against the Muslim community. But we like them to be part of the family, which means accept that Jew originally came from us. That is the thing that would unite us. And that process has started because Islamic countries like Pakistan, Syria and all these are collapsing. And it's becoming more difficult. In fact, I know many Pakistanis in America, they will never say publicly that they are Pakistani Muslims. They will say we are Indian Muslims. Because that's a passport. So it's a question of time, but I think the first thing is we must get rid of our divisions. So nobody can.
So we have a couple of questions on our hashtag Ask Swamy. So I'll ask Yogeshji to.
Sure. Thank you, Rajeshji. Coming from Jammu and Kashmir Studies Center myself, Dr. Swamy, I have a question of my own, and then there's another question on Twitter. It is a question on Jammu and Kashmir. Where do you think our foreign policy is heading towards, and where it should? Looking at the current situation across the line of control, especially CPEC being developed and GB being integrated into Pakistan as the recent statements are coming up. Thank you.
GB?
Gilgit.
First of all, the Kashmir problem is not part of foreign policy. It's a part of our internal Indian policy. Kashmir is a part of India. Every inch is part of India because when the British left, they made it very clear that all the kingdoms which they had paramount see, which means the king ruled, but there was a resident who laid down the rules, and he was a British resident. That's the way they Mysore, Punjab, Kutch, Jamnagar, all these 600 kingdoms were there, and the British then declared them as independent countries. So what the British left behind is one Pakistan, 600 independent kingdoms, and a moth-eaten India. And the credit of Sardar Patel, who despite his bad health, sat with each of these 600 and persuaded 500 to sign the instrument of accession, which is a British instrument in the Constitution of 1935, which they imposed on India, which says that if the king signs that I am merging my kingdom into India, or Pakistan as the case may be, then it becomes irrevocably final and the merger cannot be questioned again. That is what is written. Now, 500 merged into India. One of them was Kashmir. Now, therefore, there is no legal basis whatsoever for any dispute regarding Kashmir. And I've been persuading the Prime Minister that please tell the United Nations that we are withdrawing Jawaharlal Nehru's petition. Because it was never considered by the cabinet. Jawaharlal Nehru consulted anybody. I think he might have consulted So, therefore, it's totally illegal. What is not passed by cabinet is not binding on us. So, we have to therefore develop our forces to the point when we get another chance. We got a chance after the Bangladesh war, but Mrs. Gandhi chickened out. Then we got a chance after the Kargil war, but Vajpayee chickened out. This Modi is no chicken, that much I can tell you. So he has to be convinced that the moment has come. And I think the Pakistani civil society is practically completely important. The potent sections are the military, the ISI intelligence. So therefore, I think, it's a question not of foreign policy, it's a question of when we recover all the territories, including the ones the Chinese have got. That is second stage. Everything must be done at the same time. And the Chinese, in my opinion, if we negotiate the way I want the negotiation to take place, like I got Kailash Mansaro opened, everybody took a bet, including Moraji Desai, can never be done. I got it open. Now. Chinese can be persuaded, but that I'll keep for a later thing. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, either we go to war with them or they are going to go to war with us, because ISIS is coming in large numbers into Pakistan. That's a recent development. And with the help of the army and the ISIS, which has recruits also in India now, not many, but still some. There will be an opportunity again. And at that time we should be ready and prepared and go across. There is a parliament resolution of Indian Parliament in 1994, Narasimha Rao, where we took unanimously a vow that we shall not rest till every inch of Kashmir that is not with us is regained and Kashmir is finally settled by the whole of Kashmir becoming part of India. So therefore there is no question, there is no question of ever negotiating on line of control or this or that. And we have capacity. This surgical strike we proved. We went, 8 columns went inside Pakistan, 200 kilometers, killed their advanced base. This was not a base, it was an advanced base training just before they were to launch an attack on us. And killed all of them, and not one of our soldiers was killed. So therefore we have that capacity and we have to prepare for it. And in my opinion, by then we should have brought the Chinese around to, just look the other way. For some agreement, there are issues in which China wants our help. I won't say that publicly, but we can negotiate with them and we'll get it back. So that is the thing that at this moment, all these pinpricks we are putting up with it doesn't matter. The only thing that has to be done is 500,000 Kashmiri Pandits were driven out of their house and made refugees in their own country. I don't think in history you have a parallel. Leave alone 500,000, even one person who has been a refugee in his own country. How can he be a refugee? They were put in refugee camps. They have to be sent back. They can't be asked to go back. They have to be provided with that kind of secure feeding, not security, but secure feeding. And for that, I think we need to begin with 2 years of president's rule in Kashmir, and I think that's coming.
So we've got another 10 minutes to ask questions. Sorry for the short time, but if you could mention your name as well.
Yes.
I know him.
Hello, sir. Rashmikant Joshi, President, National Council of Hindu Temple. Swamiji, welcome once again to London, and thank you for your presence here in the inauguration of the caste report, which National Council of Hindu Temple have worked immensely hard, and my sincere thanks and appreciation goes to all the trustees, management committee, and all the members of National Council of Hindu Temples. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge the hard work of our General Secretary, Sree Sharma. And his hiding behind there, our Madhu Bhai Shastri. Mr. Iyer, congratulations on the book, and I'm sure that when you receive the report on the caste legislation, you will find it very informative and interesting. My question, sir, to you is that over 100 days have gone past since Donald Trump became the president of America. In your opinion, sir, how do you see the relationship between India and the US coming along during the Trump administration? Thank you.
Well, I'll first give you an anecdote. I had gone to United States to address the Indian diaspora there. And the one question everybody asked me is, shall we vote for Trump or for Hillary? And since these were informal meetings in the sense that they were not for general public, I frankly said that we should vote for Trump because Hillary had very strong, unbreakable relations especially financial relations with Pakistan. It will never be for us, and therefore we should go for it. But at that time, nobody ever thought that Trump would win. In fact, when he was quite behind Hillary in poll, the New York Times somehow picked up the story and had a 3-page story. Hindu nationalist supports Trump. The Hindu nationalist was myself. Subsequently, just before the elections results were announced, the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, Mr. Nipin Mishra, called me and asked me, who will win the US elections? I said, Trump. He said, what? All our embassies, Canada, in the United States, in Britain, Europe, they are all saying that Hillary will win. So I said, in my opinion, I believe the Indian diaspora, where many of them were LIC, the insurance agents, who used to go from house to house, and they told me that we sell insurance to the ordinary person, not very high premium. But when we sit and chat with them, they say we never want to vote in our life. But this time, we're going to teach this Washington a lesson, and we're going to vote for Trump. So he was sure that Trump would win. So on that, I gambled and said that anyway, I think he should come because of this reason of Pakistan. But I supported him, and New York Times carried this, and then I took a bet with the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary that if I win, he will take me to dinner in any place in the world, and if he wins, if he's proved to be correct, I'll take him. So, of course, in the end, I agreed to have lunch with him in his office. So, now, what I know about Trump is there is interaction between Trump's people and myself since then. And this conference I just attended, for which I came here, Ditchley Foundation is a very prestigious organization. I hardly knew it. They're so powerful that when they invited me, I went to apply for a visa, and the British Embassy said there's some online agency where you have to fill out a form. So I went there. They said you have to fill out 5 pages of forms, which I have to describe where my father was born and where he died, and how much salary he got every month, that sort of thing.
And this is despite a diplomatic passport.
Yeah, I had a diplomatic passport, and had a note for Bell, the official letter of the ministry. And they said, otherwise the computer will not accept. So I have to give all my bank accounts, my tax data for the last 3 years, blah, blah, blah. So finally, reluctantly wrote to the foundation that, listen, I can't come because what they require is this, and what I am prepared to give is this, and I have no time to give all that. I accept your authority to lay down any law you want for who should come or not, but I don't think I can submit to it. And I must say to their credit, whatever friends of mine here also put in a word, they called up the embassy, and the embassy official came to my house, picked up my passport, stamped it. That's how powerful that foundation is. It's an Anglo-American organization. And there were people from the Trump administration, the British administration, some French people, but I was the only Indian. I was a little fish out of water. In a sea of white faces, there's one black face. There was a jutting there. Anyway, from the discussion there, it appears to me 2 things. One, Trump is a businessman who will do only cost-benefit analysis and give and take. There's no sentiment in what he's going to do. So you decide what you can give him and what you want. I know what we should give and what we should want. We should offer Trump that in Syria to fight the IS, we will send 40,000 troops. And I know what to take. I will tell Mr. Trump's people, or to Mr. Trump himself, I meet him, and there's some procedures going on to see that I meet him. I would say to Mr. Trump that open your arms warehouse and let me pick what I want. Any number of destroyers, battleships. I can't afford to buy them. So I'm giving you 40,000 troops. You can't afford to have your troops there because the moment the casualty goes about 10 per week, the American liberal will be on the street, the newspaper will be screaming, and you'll withdraw like you did in Vietnam, you did in Iraq, you did in Afghanistan, etc. So our chaps will not, they will fight fiercely. And they want to be looked after because their families should not be affected, their families' children, the children's education should not be affected. But our people, I must say, very brave people. In Kargil, for example, of the dead people of our military personnel, 40% were officers, which you have nowhere in the world you will have that. Because these officers, captains and lieutenants, are so brave that they go out in the front, they lead from the front, not from the back. So our fellows can be and to defeat the ISIS, our chaps will fight with a great deal of maja, as they say. they will be there. So this is the kind of deal. Trump's animosity to China is not a real, I discovered, it's not a really substantive animosity. He feels that China has looted the United States. So he wants some reordering of the economic arrangements. And then this political thing is not a big issue with him. So don't expect that Trump will be good for us because he will, put China in this place. No, not at all. I don't think we do. We have a problem with China, and that is we have not made it clear to them that what is their core interests. We will address that. For instance, their core interest is we should not support Japan. Now, my view is if Americans support us, Japan will support us. If the Americans don't support us, the Japanese will not support us. So there is no use wooing Japan. And at the cost of anger of the Chinese. Second thing is that if Americans intervene in Taiwan, we will be neutral. Of course, we have already accepted Taiwan as part of China and repeatedly said so. So there's no need for us to intervene. And the Americans, if they ask consultants, we tell them, don't do it. So I think with China also we can, if you keep the Chinese okay, it's very easy to negotiate with Trump. But please, I must tell you, from what I know of our bureaucrats and diplomats and so on, we are so much carried away by atmospherics. Obama came to Indian Parliament and then in his speech he said, India deserves to be on the Security Council. Now what was the next day headline? Obama promises India the Security Council seat. He promised nothing of the kind. And nothing happened after that. So we get carried away with flattery. And diplomacy, if somebody finds out that you are amenable to flattery, the diplomats don't mind lying to their teeth to make you feel very happy. So deal with Trump. Know what your interests are. Our interest today is to have the most modern military force. Because there's nobody in that region. And certainly, any country which feels threatened by China, we would stand by them. Sri Lanka repeatedly asked us to support us against China, and we go on hawing, and now the Sri Lankans have made a deal with China. The same thing happened with Nepal, but fortunately, at the request of the government, I went to Nepal, and now there is some cushion that has been worked out, and the Chinese influence is kept at bay. But we have to work on that, and this is the best administration you can get, because this administration belongs to nobody. The others, either the liberals, Trump doesn't care a damn if there is religious persecution in India. As long as it's the right religious persecution.
Okay, we have time, only 5 more minutes. 2 quick questions, please, so we can close the session then.
Dr. Swamy, my name is Nish. My question is, you made a mention about the census. The recent 2011 census has to that, for the first time, Hindu population has gone just below 80%.
Yeah.
Certain parts of India, like for example.
Either with the Sikhs and the Buddhists and the Jains, we are 81.5.
But still, the going is not good. It's going down every time we take
Yes,
a
it is
census.
going down.
Yes, West Bengal, as if it is, we have almost lost to the Islamists. The news about
Sorry,
the
question, please.
Yes, what I mean to say is, what I mean to say is, people like you who are really a deterrent to the Islamists in what you call India, and similarly we got leaders in other parts of the world, like for example in the UK we got Douglas Murray and Majid Nawaz and others. In the US also we got.
The question, please.
The question is, it's only you who has the leg soldiers to create a coordinate against the Islamists throughout the world. All these leaders, they're only talking in their country. You have people in US here, in Australia, and US, and everywhere. Why don't you take the leadership to coordinate the move against the designs of the Islamists and do something to contain them? Otherwise, it will be a threat to the humanity.
No, so far, what is the threat that you see? ISIS, no? Or anything else?
Even the moderate Islamists also like that.
No, that is your presumption.
Yes.
I think, first of all, you see, just because so far the Muslim population is rising and our percentage-wise is rising and ours is percentage-wise, doesn't mean that it can't be reversed. Because it could be reversed for 1,000 reasons. Maybe the Muslim population with more education and more militancy amongst the Muslim women might also start declining. By the way, Muslim population has been declining. Percentage-wise, ours has been declining faster. So therefore, percentage-wise, it shows them going up a little more. But the Muslim population since 1961, 61, the 61, 71, 81, 91, 2001, etc. There is a consistent decline, very slow decline. The only problem we had is this infiltration. That changed the composition of Assam. But now we've got a government there, we are taking care of that, not to worry. And other things are going on which I will not say in public.
Dr. Swamy, there is a rise of Wahhabism. We have been seeing, just to exchange this question, we have been seeing across Europe also, now in England also. I was just watching a video where in Darul Ulum, there was a seminary over here and they were teaching wrong things about Hinduism. So what the Indian diaspora over here can actually do for this thing?
First you unite as the Indic community. You got a lot of differences amongst ourselves. Their caste problem. First, develop a consciousness that you are Hindu and all this caste and all is baggage which we are not very concerned about. And two, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, and Parsis, these are people whom you should integrate, you should interact with them. So let's form an Indic community first. Then you'll be able to meet these people. I tell you, as far as military threat is concerned, we have no real serious military threat from these people. I know the army, its morale, its capacity. I'm a member of the Standing Committee on Defense. I can tell you we can meet any such threat that might come. Just this pinpricking and bleeding that goes on, that has to be solved only with Pakistan breaking up into 4 countries. We have done it before twice, but that obviously is not enough, so now 4. And then if that is not enough, then 8. Like that.
Just speaking as somebody who works with the diaspora here, your question with regard to what we can do about this Wahhabi identity which is becoming prominent, it's worthy to recall that in Europe and in America there have been attacks on members of the dharmic communities where the host community has not been able to distinguish or has chosen not to regard and has tarred us with the same brush. So there is an absolutely vital, critical need of the hour that as dharmic communities we actually participate even more in the machinery as well as the judiciary and indeed the political sphere in this country. To give you an idea of how bad it is at the moment in terms of how little regard there is and how we failed to stand and be recognised, there were statistics published not so long ago about Islamophobia, and the government had a huge body of data behind it. Now, a very dear friend of mine and a gentleman from the Sikh community, his name is Hardeep, he gave a Freedom of Information request to ask about the constitution of that data. And interrogating it, we found that 27% of all of those crimes, which were classified as Islamophobia, they were actually crimes perpetrated upon members of the dharmic community in this country. And yet if we hadn't asked that question, we wouldn't have known that that was going on. So we have to increase our footprint, we have to increase our presence, and we have to increase our engagement. And a fundamental part of what Dr. Swamiji is saying is let's do that together. It is very much the need of the hour for us.
Hello, Dr. Swamy. Vikas here. Say we are really honored to be present here with you, and I hope your visa is multiple.
Yes, it is.
The question is related with Congress Party. So, is when are we going to see the end of Gandhi's? Or we are going slow because Buddha Baba is there?
No, it's not a question of Congress Party still got a lot of good people, and we need a national opposition party. But I mean, this may be my prejudice, but I don't think that the residual Nehru family is fit for Indian politics. And I think either they will have to retire and go back to Italy, or they may end up in jail. One of the two. But the Congress party with a Swadeshi leadership has a future, in my opinion.
There's a lot of confusion on Lal Bahadur Shastri's sudden demise, and you know, some light on that.
All sudden deaths, there is a problem. Even with Mahatma Gandhi, there is a problem. And so Lal Bahadur Shastri, I will say it in short because we are running out of time. There's no doubt that he was poisoned, and his wife said so at that time. Then she was silenced. His sons are one son is Sunil Shastri. He's a member of our party, and he's given me the whole description of how it all happened. And there's the same reason for which Dindal Upadhyay was also murdered. It was to pave the way for by the Soviets for the Nehru family to return to power.
That would be the last question.
Hi, Dr. Swamy. This is Varun Sundar. So I have a quick question since you're an expert in the Chinese in China. So what is your take on the debt crisis in China? And then what do you think we can learn or unlearn from the Chinese growth story?
Well, it's not a short question, but I'll put it by examples. Latin America was thought in the 50s and 60s as the next developed countries. They collapsed. Japan was thought as a country which will overtake the United States, especially after they bought Rockefeller Center. They collapsed in 1997. And I predict that the financial problems which beleaguered Latin America and Japan will also hit China within the next 4 or 5 years. And China will also have a major financial crisis, at which time we will overtake them because we have a much better financial system. We may not have a very good finance minister, but we have a...
Thank you very much, Dr. Swamy.
I would like to end this session. Thank you, and with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for moderating and keeping the questions tight and keeping the answers long. Appreciate that. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for your engaging questions. And can we have one more round of applause, please, for the insightful answers?
Those of you that would like to join the organisation headed by Dr. Subramanian Swamy, Virat Hindustan Sangam, you can register by logging on to www.vhsindia.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to close the session, I would now like to invite Madhu Shastri ji, please, wrap things up. Thank you very much.
Namaskar to everybody. Can I ask to Rafikan Joshi ji to please come to the stage here? Our National Council of Hindu People's President. And Satish Keshav. And I request to the come to stage to his very, very hard work. He is also flying with the Swamiji, Jagdish Bhai Shetty ji, please. General Secretary of BHS International. And I ask to Jaswant Bhai Chavan, our trustee of the GST UK, please come. I call to the overseas friends of BJP, say General Secretary Amit Tiwari, please. And Deputy Director of the Neuro Center, Vibhav, please. Please come. Please. Aye. And it's, one young man is there. Every time he say, don't tell my name, but I want to say his name. Rajesh Singh ji. Please come to stage. Come on. Please. Please give the big clap for the young generation. Please, everybody can stand and have the one photo together. Yeah, please.
Before we start with the photographs, Rashmi Ganti, please. We're going to give the last vote of thanks for Dr. Swamy. As you know, there are lots of things going on in India at the moment. Huge changes happening, and the demands on Parliament have been greater than before. Dr. Swamy, for a long time, has been a great champion and supporter of the Indian diaspora.
We'll have a proper group, yeah?
It's a testament to his conviction and his desire to see us all thrive and prosper in our own countries, but with the Hindu identity, the Indian identity, the Dharmic identity, that in fact he has chosen to be here with us at a time when all these election results are happening and everything else. So I'd like to offer a vote of thanks and ask Rashmi Ganti to say only 2 or 3 more words, and then we will wrap up. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Satishji, and once again, Can we have a big round of applause for Dr. Swamiji? He's no stranger here. He has been to London to facilitate and grace his presence whenever National Council of Hindu Temples have arranged conferences and seminars. So once again, I'm so delighted and thankful to Dr. Swamiji to take the time during his very busy schedule to be here today during the launch of the CAST report, which I'm sure you will find it very useful, and there is still a lot of work to be done as well. The work for the CAST report started many years ago, and the National Council of Hindu Temples, the committee and all the members have worked tirelessly towards this, including VHS, GB as well, to spearhead the campaign. And this is the culmination of the hard work over the last few years that we have a magnificent report in front of us. And the hard work, as I already mentioned earlier, our General Secretary, Sree Sharma, has worked immensely hard to make this report possible. So once again, a big round of applause to him. Thank you to Mr. Iyer for your contribution today, and good luck to the launch of your NDTV fraud book as well. Most importantly, this meeting was scheduled to be done a few weeks later, sometime in April, but when we found out that Dr. Swamiji is coming to London, we couldn't miss that opportunity, and we were so grateful that you've done this today. And to the Nehru Center for providing this magnificent venue for this important event, and to thank all of you, those who have come far afield to grace this occasion as well. So thank you all very much indeed. Namaste.